Welcome, guys, to this episode of the All Things Are Right podcast. We got some special guests today. Actually, we've met before at some Wealth Genius events. We've interacted before, but we never actually sat down and done a podcast. So, Babar, Faizan, thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciate it, guys. And I'm looking forward to this because I know you guys have your hands in a lot of things, multifamily and construction, different markets, even different strategies across the board. And I know there's a lot to learn from you guys tonight. So, welcome aboard, and happy to have you guys here.
Thanks for having
Thank you for
us.
having us.
It's great to be here, and you're looking forward to the conversation.
Right on, right on. Tell people a little bit about who you guys are and maybe how you got started in real estate. Do the classic, where you started and where you're going.
Our journey has been an individual journey, but it's also been one of coming together as partners. When it comes to real estate, that's where we came together to join forces. We were focused on the same markets and the same strategies. So really, capitalizing on strengths and weaknesses is what brought us together organically in a very competitive market in Ontario around the 2020, 2021 timeframe. So this is when interest rates were low. There were multiple bids, over asking offers, and it was such a competitive environment that we had to develop skill sets to go direct to the seller, go off market, and really network with those that are in close proximity to opportunities. So that really evolved into, from wholesaling to flips. Flips was something that we started attracting joint venture partners, and we, evolved into conversions, 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, and that's when, we wanted to get more formally educated and mentored into multifamily. So we, joined Well Genius about 3.5 years ago, from this date. And since then, we focused on land development and multifamily while still having our active business. So, I spoke about the wholesaling and flips. That what really did was help develop a team, develop a very strong supply chain. So we now have a construction business here in the GTA area of Ontario, where we help other investors and homeowners achieve cost efficient and schedule driven renovations. So that's us in a nutshell. Kind of took us from the start to the beginning, but let us know if you want us to go a bit deeper into any of it.
I think we definitely need to go deeper because otherwise that'd be a really short podcast. But I, I like how you said you guys had some strengths that really allowed you to partner together. Were there any things that maybe you suggest when someone's looking for a partner to look out for, or you hear a lot. I should preface this. You hear a lot about people partnering in business. It's a marriage, and then it usually goes poorly. But you guys have been going strong since COVID times or around there, right? So, what would you suggest to those people wondering how's the best way to partner? Who should I partner with? What should I look out for? Those sort of things.
I think that's a great question. I think with every partnership, you need to kind of recognize what the strengths and weaknesses of each individual are, right? And that kind of defines natural roles within the business for yourself and your partners. For us, I think we've been very fortunate that if we were to describe our partnership, it would be almost like a visionary and an execution partner. So we kind of naturally fell into those roles over time, and we keep redefining them over time, but
Sure.
that's more or less the high level role that we fall into. And we've been very fortunate that whatever strengths Babar has, they tend to be sometimes my weaknesses, and whatever strengths I have, they tend to be sometimes, Babar's weaknesses. So we've been very fortunate to kind of fall into natural roles within our business. But I think if anybody is looking for partners or partners within their business, you probably want to look at, hey, what are your weaknesses? What are you trying to improve within your business? What do you need help with right now? And that's probably the best way to figure out what kind of individual you're looking for. What do they need to bring to the table? How are they as a person in terms of their personality, in terms of their capabilities?
Hmm.
And that's probably the most effective way to bring additional partners into your business.
Oh, that's well
You know,
said. Yeah. Go ahead,
if I may
Babar.
add something like, for anybody that's looking for a partner, it's a very organic process. It's about two people coming together. So there's underlying relationships. Faizan spoke about the compatibility, but it's really about making sure that there's shared vision and there's alignment, because you're not going to align with everybody, and
Mm,
it's okay to have a bit of trial and error. So like Faizan said, we were fortunate that we came together and we evolved together. But I do know that this was very organic. It really was not prescriptive. We had no idea that this is why we're coming together. It's just everything we have shared with you is in hindsight, right? So, when whoever is looking for a partner, it's a very organic process. So let it be very natural.
mm. That makes sense. Yeah, you kind of become friends a little bit before you don't just hop right into bed with each other right away.
Exactly.
Yeah. So once you did kind of partner together and start out, though, it sounds like you started with wholesaling a little bit first, going off market for your leads and for your deals. Was this in like the Toronto market where you're doing this? Because that sounds, in my mind, the most competitive in Ontario. Is that kind of where you're based out of right now, or at least when you started out?
When we initially started out, we were both active in the Niagara
Oh,
market. So
Niagara. Okay.
that's basically where we continued to move along with the wholesaling business. And to be very honest, that business at the time was kind of more a lead generation business at the time because of the way the market was going. Obviously, we know it was very hard to find deals. It was very hard to convince sellers that they can get a higher price elsewhere. So it was a very organic lead generation business to feed both Babar's and mine individual businesses at the time. And eventually, it became whatever we did not want to keep, we wholesaled. So
Mm,
that's kind
okay.
of how that process started.
Did you guys already have a kind of a flipping renovation background when you started out, or you just kind of bootstrapped it as you went? Because I know for me when I started wholesaling, I was like, well, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'll figure it out as I go.
You know, we have individual backgrounds, right? Faizan is very much hands-on. He's got a lot of, construction experience, and so he leads our construction business, right?
Mm,
Where I have got exposure to construction is really managing the constructor and asking those questions and making sure budgets and schedules stay aligned. So, now we have matured in our roles where a lot of the day-to-day construction is really led by Faizan. And again, great example, strengths and weaknesses, right?
mhm.
You want to let the person that has the strength to lead, and your job is to get out of the way. And if there's a problem, they need support, then that's when you come in, right?
I like that. Yeah, it's good to be able to support each other in order to progress the project along here. So what I guess you guys, since you guys are based in the Niagara region, what was the market like back then? Because I know it's probably changed a lot now, and one of probably the reasons why you started to diversify and change your direction. By the time, how was it? How was it in terms of finding off market deals? Was it hard or was it easy? I'll tell you, like it seems like it's harder and harder to find good off market leads even nowadays because it's so saturated.
Absolutely. Back then, so that's part of the equation, is finding the off-market lead. The other part of the equation is, what are you going to do with it? What is the exit strategy? What is the market going to allow for,
Mm,
right? Because a lot of these strategies are or were a function of where the market cycle was, right? So if the market is conducive to flips, we would put in the work and flip it. Sometimes there were opportunities that we would just hold tail, meaning that we would just, put minimal work and put it back on the market.
mm,
Why? Because the market could bear that type of strategy. Can we do that now in today's market? Probably not, right? Completely different environment. So, as the market evolved back then, it was the strategies were wholesaling, flips, wholesaling, conversions, right? And then the interest rate started rising. And when you have partners, right, it's about splitting the pie. So you want to add more number of units,
mm.
and you want to be able to scale up. So, that strategy was something that, we honed in on, which served us well at that time. Fast forward right now, it's almost like, the market has come full cycle. It is not the best market. It is not the best strategy, but we're still. Our job is to make sure that we have a fully stabilized portfolio. This is an area where a lot of investors sometimes do not focus because they're so invested in the acquisition and finding that deal or off-market deal is the stabilization piece, which is
Mm,
what we're going through right now in this market cycle is making sure that we've got the right tenants in place, making sure that they are paying because welcome to Ontario, things happen, right?
that's
We need to make sure that we've got the right management, right? And just overall, not letting the property just go on autopilot just because it's rented. That's something we realize is we still need to stay in the mix. We still need to be actively involved and constantly looking at if tenants change their jobs. Okay, what do we need to update? Do we need to be wary of any LTV issues? Because sometimes there's a missed or late payment. So we need to have systems and processes that we stay on top of because again, these are projects with joint venture partners where we need to ensure that there's proper reporting, accountability, and there's comfort in the partner that we are managing the property effectively.
mm.
So yeah.
Well, no, well said, because I know sometimes you think, oh, it's going to be super passive once you get the tenants and you can kind of sit back, but real estate isn't passive, and we all know that. It's cliche to even say that, right? But it sounds like you guys have put in a lot of time and effort into putting systems processes in place in terms of managing your tenants. Do you keep that portion in house, or are you managing property managers in these areas? What do you guys prefer? What's your method of madness?
I think for us, we prefer the property management route just because we know how tenants can get in Ontario, and it becomes far too active a process to be managing some of these tenants full time. Outside of that, like Babar mentioned earlier, right, you want to get out of the way of the experts and let the experts handle these things. Property management isn't a super high cost business, so it's not like it's affecting our performance too much, but it is enough that whoever is the expert can come in and kind of take over and manage all these aspects for us. And we're essentially coming in behind and just dealing with some of the problems they're having, figuring out how can we help assist them to improve the operations or efficiencies in the property. And we're kind of taking a bit more of a passive approach and just managing them.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, I was gonna say, because it sounds like you guys are busy enough as it is. So if you had property management on top of that, I was gonna say, how the hell do you manage all this to keep everything on track? I think number one thing for most people, and this is just my opinion, you should offload property management because, like you're saying, it's not worth the heartache, and generally, it's better that the tenants probably don't know who owns the building, and you be the one to go and say, "Hey, I got to evict you," or do whatever you have to do, because they're gonna try to pull on your heartstrings, or they're gonna treat you a whole different type of way. Have with that being said, I know Ontario is really bad for the landlord tenant board. Have you Is that one reason why you guys have looked elsewhere outside of Ontario, or begun to try to branch out for different markets?
That's a great question. We are based in Ontario. We believe in Ontario. This is the population density center. It always will be, right? So that's great for real estate. But we do recognize that there are challenges, and we look at these in terms of risk, right? When you have a non-paying tenant, or if you can't have certainty in your timelines for permits, this all translates into financial risk. And for those reasons, we diversified our markets, and we were very intentional in which markets we chose. So we ended up in St. John, New Brunswick,
Hmm.
um, with a very niche strategy, right? The asset that we bought was located right across a hospital. So we decided to build a senior home. And this was not
Mm.
something that we decided. This was through consultation, through talking to the local community, the hospital, the stakeholders. It was apparent that this was where the need was. So again, we wanted to swim in the lane of where people wanted to solve problems, where the housing dollars are, where the government grants and incentives are. And, that's the path we chose, right? So the path of least resistance. Same thing in Alberta. What are we doing in Edmonton is more focused around development because the city is very pro development. They have a very well defined prescriptive path of how to take land and get it to a multifamily, completely built and occupied, layered with CMHC financing. It's a very defined procedure. So, you've kind of taken the uncertainty out of the equation, and therefore given more risk mitigation. We have better guardrails, and no project is risk free, but
Sure.
we are looking for certainty as long as we can execute. We're looking for partnership from the city, we're looking for partnership from the government. And so all this ecosystem, if it comes together and numbers work out, these are the reasons why we are now divesting away from Ontario, because
Mm.
these are the ingredients we look for, right? We're looking to swim in the direction that the government and policy wants us to go. We want to create new housing. We want to create more affordable housing. We want to be able to do it in a reasonable time frame at a reasonable cost, right? All of these things have to be a checkbox for us to make a move. And right now, those checkboxes are not in Ontario, at least from what we're seeing. We're learning a lot more about what's happening in Toronto with the new bylaw updates. So certainly, right, these are the opportunities that we're constantly looking at. We're looking at policy and we're trying to see where is the opportunity in that.
I'd like to definitely touch on the seniors home in out east, but in terms of the Edmonton or out west, is it more so there's less red tape there, or cheaper land? What are some of the other factors that make it a bit better, at least currently, to invest over there than in Ontario, or at least in some places in Ontario?
So that's a great question. I'll define that in two ways.
Sure.
One from our perspective and one from just the opportunity, like you mentioned. I think the red tape is huge. The fact that they have, kind of defined zoning. So, for example, the land that we were looking to purchase, they rezoned that land while we were in the process of purchasing it to essentially medium density. They were single family homes, and they automatically, because it was in an area that they wanted to see development in, so they automatically rezoned that area.
They did
So
their
we
job
got
for
very
you,
fortunate. They
right?
did, yeah,
Or
they
your
did
job for you.
half our
Yeah.
job for us, yeah. But that was one thing, and then their timelines as well. They're not as restrictive. They're not as long as they are down here in Ontario. I think that was another thing. And then there's a large availability of builders, of support, of the networks that you need to carry out a project like that in Edmonton or, even in Calgary. But it's because they're two large cities rather than in the GTA, for example, where you have, 25 different cities all over and you have that many more builders, contractors, and just the networks overall. So it's a little bit harder to figure that out over here than it is over there.
Hmm.
Um, and then I think, from our personal perspective, I think it was also a larger development that we wanted to take on, ground up development in that type of area. And I would really say, as bad as it sounds, playing in Alberta, playing in New Brunswick is a little bit more like playing on an easier difficulty. And then you bring your learnings, you bring your mistakes, you bring all of that back to a market like Ontario, or if you're looking in BC, or any of these markets where there's a lot of profitability, there's a lot of opportunity, but they're just slightly more difficult to play in. You need to
Hmm.
have a little bit more cash. Everything's more expensive. Everything takes longer. You might face certain other challenges that you might not face in these markets. So I think it's also part of the learning process for us to go do it there, keep doing it there while the opportunity is there, while it makes sense, while the profitability is there, and bring some of those lessons and teachings back to Ontario. And like we were talking about the sixplex, for example, bylaws in Toronto, maybe move into something like that.
Mm. I was actually just talking to shout out to Ali Nazarian just the other day, and he's big on the six boxes and those sort of things, but mainly in Ontario. I think he does some stuff out
Yeah.
west, but it's uh, it's interesting to see the difference between out west and Ontario. So I agree with you there. It does seem like it's a better opportunity out west, at least currently. But there's nothing wrong about doing it on easy mode. You go where you're treated best, and if you're getting the golden handouts from the government too, with CMHC and all this financing and from the municipal, like it's it's a no-brainer. You got to milk that for all it's worth, for lack of a better way of saying it.
You got to follow the money, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. It goes back to you saying the way you swim the stream. But I guess tell me a little bit more. So you're doing a full new development. You're not just doing any conversions now. You're building from the ground up. So maybe you could explain a little bit of the process of that entails, and maybe you don't, like you said, you don't have to do numbers, but maybe you can roughly just explain the vision of what you're planning to build over there.
Absolutely. As we were learning more about CMHC financing, learning more about government policies, like where is it and how is it that they want us to create new rental stock? Um, we were looking at markets such as Edmonton, within the inner city, on the transit line. So location was extremely important to us. We didn't want to do a project just anywhere. And the
Mm-hmm.
type of strategy that we realized was that, the biggest opportunity lift is when you purchased land and get it rezoned, get it approved for a development permit, and then get it approved for a building permit, and then actually build, like construct the houses, and then go for occupancy. All these steps are basically called like development and construction. That's our strategy that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is in every single milestone, there is a massive equity lift that comes as a result of it, right? You increase your value, and there are also exit strategies, right? So you could flip the land, you could flip the building permit, you could flip the development permit, you could flip the house, right? Once it's fully constructed, right? That's what we see right now in Facebook groups. Like
Mm-hmm.
people are selling eight plexes, six plexes, right? That's what's happening. That's an exit strategy.
Yep.
So, what we're doing differently than what at least we see a lot of other people focused on is we're not buying direct from the builder. We're buying land and we're starting from the ground up. And with full control, we can manage the highest and best use. And the biggest example is like our lots that's on the transit line. It's like four continuous lots. So it's just, sizable
It's quite
parcel
a big chunk. Yeah.
that, yeah. And initially we were planning on building 100 units, 144 units, because that's what we were able to build based on feedback from the architects. Um, the lot on the next to us is developing 42 units, and the lot on the corner is zoned for 99 units. So while we were looking at these, multi units coming online and the amount of supply coming online in Edmonton, in consultation with the city, we realized that, why build a six-story apartment building? That's too much risk, too many units coming online, 4 years out, who knows what the rental market looks like? Why not focus on the missing middle? And this is kind of a buzzword right now across Canada, is the missing middle, which is, a one or two bed condo is something that families outlive after some point, and they
Mm-hmm.
can't jump straight into a detached home because of affordability. Well, what's in the middle? Right? In the middle, you have a three bed, two and a half bath, separate entrance, separate parking, separate utility meters. Now you've got the longevity. Now you've got the tenant that is going to stay there for the long term, and you can command some pretty high rents, right?
Sure. Sure.
So that's basically what we're developing now in Edmonton, are row stacked townhomes, a total of 32 units. And we're going straight from land acquisition all the way to putting our team together, architect, development manager, engineering company, electrical, civil, mechanical, structural, all the studies that come together for the permit application. Then we go out to bid. Builders now are bidding on our job, right? So the
Mm.
tables have turned. No builder is pitching to us anymore, right? No realtor is selling a pro forma to us anymore. We are the ones
Yeah, you're the
squeezing
guys.
their budgets, comparing and contrasting, and then being educated ourselves to make sure that we pick the right partner. So, we get full control over the entire process when you start the development from scratch. So that's basically us in a nutshell in Edmonton.
I love that. Yeah, it's not that you have to be a control freak, but the fact that you leave so much money on the table if you are buying directly from the builder because they're already having their markup, or you're buying for the realtor, they're doing their markup. That's sweet that you guys could go right from the ground up, right from the land. So right now you're saying you're at the bidding process. Is that about right? Do you know roughly when you're going to get shovels in the ground, or is that still a little too soon to say? Or at least when do you plan on it?
We're actually in the process of finalizing with builders. So we're looking to start to get shovels in the ground. It obviously gets very cold in Edmonton in the winter,
That's a good
very
point,
cold.
actually. Yeah.
So we were we were hoping to get started around late November, early December, but I think we're probably looking at sometime in January, February. We'll start with our excavation.
Mm, okay. Yeah, I wonder that's a good point. Everything's gonna be frozen. It's
Yeah, yeah.
gonna be like Hoth. Oh boy. Well, they can still start certain things and getting your. I guess do you have to still bring in all of your servicing to the lots, or were these already did they come service prior? Like how ground up are we talking that you have to make this happen?
So that's a good question. So for that size, you do have to bring in the servicing, right? Because at the moment they would only have enough for one house, one
Oh
unit.
wow. Okay.
So we have all the utilities already disconnected more or less, and they'll be bringing in brand new servicing to the lots to cover for the the new density that we're putting in there.
Mm. And did you have to do any of the typical environmental studies or traffic studies as well? Um, that was probably a good upfront cost if you did have to do that.
Yeah, so environmental we had to do traffic and all not as much. I think if you're looking to do it in Toronto, for example, you have to do traffic, you have to do shadow studies, you have to do I think even noise and this and that. We didn't have to do any of those. We just had to do mainly environmental. We had to do asbestos testing, grading. So mainly more or less the major ones that you expect in a development anyways. And obviously we budgeted for those costs when we were starting the project.
Mm, okay, yeah, that's definitely something to begin with is budgeting, budgeting, budgeting. But over the course of your time, I'm sure you've done your conversions, your other flips and whatnot, so you know generally what costs are, and then you probably put a safety factor on top of that, like a typical 10-15% just to be safe. Um, on this, assuming you joint ventured a little bit too with partners, is that the case? I heard through the grapevine because unfortunately I wasn't able to go to Expand conference. You guys actually got a really interesting award. Maybe you could tell us about that, and it's to do with the JVing.
Yes, we were very fortunate to win the Best JV award. This is twice in a row.
Really? Oh,
Um,
congrats! I didn't realize it was
yeah, so
last year
that
too.
makes it even better, right? And so here's the thing, right? Like these awards, as prestigious as they are, we don't know what the context behind, like there's a committee behind it, but the details around the JV is based on anybody's interpretation. So from our perspective, right, we wrapped up a 25 unit development in New Brunswick just earlier this year, and that was a JV, and then we started and closed on our Edmonton development project, which was also a JV, right? Both use the same financing product, which is the CMHC MLI. Um, Both had very similar structures in terms of partnership, in terms of how JVs came together, how we had our active partners, how we had boots on the ground, um, more or less like the roles that Faizan and I played in both projects. We had a much larger role in the Edmonton project, right? Because with each project, you just build skill sets, develop your muscle, and therefore now you're ready to take on, more complex projects. So, the JV, I believe, is for each of those projects. And, honestly, it's team sport. It's a coming together of many people. It's those relationships that we've built over the course of time, right? It's like you dig the well before you need it. So these are the relationships that we have developed as a result of executing those projects. And, some of these relationships have been repeat, right? They've gone from this project to project. right? So it's really the goes to show that these partnerships are lifelong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't want to treat them as one and done, right? You want to dig the well deep. I think you said that, dig the well deep. I use that same expression because then once you have one good deal, you would hope, hey, let's do this again. It worked the first time. Let's keep it rolling, you know? And then it's also easier too. You don't have to keep prospecting new people or attracting new people to your crew. It's like, hey, we know each other. We know how we operate. Let's make it happen again. So that's very cool that you were able to have a lot of people involved in this deal. So I guess yes, it wasn't just you two, but it was a collective win. So congrats on that. That's pretty sweet.
Thank you.
Yeah. You mentioned out now. Maybe we can switch gears a little bit because we were out west a little bit, and maybe we can jump over out east. Was that 25 unit the seniors home, or was that something also a different entirely?
No, that was the seniors home.
Oh, okay. Okay. Do you mind explaining how that came about? Because it sounds like not only are you doing multifamily real estate, but now you have a seniors home business.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think one thing we didn't touch up on as much earlier was with majority of the opportunities, we talk about partnerships, we talk about relationships, but really when we started looking into these markets, it was mainly partnerships, and it was our relationships that brought some of these projects to us. And they'd either, we had a relationship with them before, and they felt that we were the right partners to work with them to take on these deals, or for whatever reason, they were brought to us. With this one, it was very similar. It was brought to us as well through another partner. And, that's when we started working on it as well. There were obviously many people involved. I think one of the biggest things with regards to this, while it's a senior care project, we ourselves are not managing the senior care aspect of it. So
Hmm.
one of the things that attracted us to this was, we don't want to start another business, especially in a field that's so outside of our
That's completely
expertise.
separate. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. And you have to learn about the liabilities of it, the management and the operations and all that, and staffing and the regulations and all that. You have to go through all that process, right? So for us, we were fortunate because in this project, the way we were able to structure it was that we essentially just took care of the real estate aspect. So we picked up a concrete building, tore it all down inside, and rebuilt it into 25 separate units. And then we brought in an additional company to come in and take care of the senior care aspect of it. So for us, it's kind of a revenue share model with the senior care company. And because it's right in front of the hospital, it's very, very easy back and forth, right, for nurses, for the staff to come and help out.
That's super
But for
convenient.
us, yeah, it's super convenient. And we were like, we only want to work within our expertise. So we will take care of the real estate, we'll take care of the maintenance and the management of the real estate, but the other company comes in to take care of the senior care aspect of it.
That seems like a good
Yeah, there's a
lessons
bit of
learned.
a
Go ahead.
backstory as well, right? Like with the senior housing, like why we ended up in that space was the seller of that building um, is a Catholic church, right?
Oh,
So,
interesting.
they have a lot of assets, prime locations, and we all know that the Catholic Church is not in the business of real estate, right? So that building was really not being used to its highest and best use. At some point it was a COVID overflow facility for the hospital. At some point it's been used by Red Cross. And when we heard about the senior housing opportunity, in consultation with the hospital, like the opportunity became more clear because they had over 150 medically discharged seniors that did not have housing nearby.
Oh no.
And
Wow.
that's where the PSW, the personal staff workers, their challenges is to commute to all these remote areas, provide that level of care. And, the level of care is different for each senior. So sometimes it's more housekeeping, sometimes it's more reminders, sometimes it's more, involved. So, when we look at a healthcare system and the burden on the PSW workers, like we saw this as an opportunity that if we can consolidate all the seniors under one roof right across, because we share the parking lot, right? Right across the hospital, and we don't have to worry about finding those seniors, the hospital can help
You're gonna have
lease
a
up the
constant
building.
flow. You'll never run out.
The hospital can help with their PSW work. The hospital can bring their processes, their technology, their business, and we just have a revenue share agreement, right? And we manage the building. So that's a bit of a backstory to
Yeah,
for the listeners to kind of see that, um, we are not experts in the senior space. We just saw the opportunity, put two and two together, and work with the partners, right? They all are stakeholders in our success.
that is super creative. That is very cool, especially seeing that need and fulfilling it. Because I don't know. There's something I feel like there's something virtuous to take care of your elders and things too. So I respect that a lot. Uh, During the build itself, though, you said it was just a concrete structure, right? So it was down to the studs. It was gutted. Did you have any lessons learned building that 25 units that you're planning on applying to the ones out west or in future projects? Were there any, oh shoot, like this is bad, we made a mistake moments that you learned from as well?
I think that's a great question. One of the things you always learn when you go through a renovation or a construction like that is that sometimes the foundations of the building can be neglected over time.
Hmm.
And we're talking for us, for example, it was the elevator, the boiler, things like that. They had been neglected over time, right? Um, I think for us, one of the biggest excitements, I should say, for this new build is that everything will be coming in brand new. So
Yeah.
the amount of things that we have to tear out and add back in, especially being a concrete building, which is harder to work on, it's all brand new. So we don't really have to worry about that. I think the biggest challenges we had with this was mainly that it was an older concrete building, and so we had to be a little bit more careful when working with it. And we changed everything on the inside. So, whether you're talking about the windows, again, with the elevator motor, basically all the fundamentals of the building we had to change. So, um, yeah, I think it was mainly just that understanding. Maybe that was what drove us to go for something new because we saw the challenges and recognized that it wasn't something we wanted to deal with going forward.
Oh, so do you think in the future you'll try to develop the land from the very start, or at least is that sort of the new direction that you guys are taking together? Or it really
I think
depends
there's
probably, but
Yeah, it really depends. For that building, the thing is the numbers worked out. If the numbers worked out, then obviously the opportunity is there to carry out the project. I think generally that's always the case. That's always the risk as well, right? With value add, once you start to open things up, I'm sure in your history as well, when you've done construction projects, when you start to open things up, then you're like, hey, this is a bigger challenge than I initially thought it would be. And that's kind of always the mindset that you have to go into it when you're taking on an older project. That whatever you put into your performa will almost never be how the project actually turns out, because you're going to get surprises. So I think if the opportunity is there, we will always take on value adds. It's our background, it's where we come from.
mm,
But at the same time, I think, especially with the way the government is going, with the way the policies that are coming in with new housing, I think that's where all the policy will kind of be pushed towards, and the money that the government's putting into building new housing and all as well. I think that really is the direction where we would like to keep moving forward for now.
understood. No, that definitely makes sense. You don't want to go back on your roots, turn your back fully on that. I do have I do like myself a conversion or two. I enjoy them because you kind of have to work with what you got, and they're never one is not never really the same as the other. There's always a new problem, like you said, or you open a wall and you're like, oh shoot, this doesn't work. You have to replace. In one of my cases, I had to replace a whole low bearing beam that I didn't expect. I was like, oh
Oh
no,
wow.
yeah, not nothing too crazy, but just everything's figure outable. So
Yes.
yeah, conversions. I think just on a small tangent, I think will always be a staple in Canada, at least right now, because there's so many single family homes. And if you want to increase the density, I don't think everyone's going to just right away at least knock down all of them. You will have to work with what you got and put a tiny home in the back or make an ADU, additional dwelling unit, in somewhere in the house structure itself. Um, but maybe that's more for like the really big cities like Toronto, London, all those spots. Yeah. So, anyways, enough about my ADUs. But so, what is next for you guys once you finish out west? Are you taking on more partners? Are you looking at other projects around? Where do you really see yourself, guy? Where do you see yourself going in the next 5, 10 years with the company?
That's a question we ask ourselves quite frequently, and the answer evolves as we kind of hone in on the recipe, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it takes a long time in any investor's journey to first learn about what markets they want to focus on, what strategies they want to hone in on. It takes a long time for them to develop their own investment criteria, right? Because you can't be chasing shiny object syndromes, right? You have to have a criteria so that you can say no to certain opportunities. And that's very powerful, right? So, and to be able to stick to your criteria as well, right? That takes time. So now we are at that point, right? That we have pretty much graduated to all these points, and we have now figured out a recipe which works. So we wanted to scale exactly the way we have seen it work. So it's basically developing more new missing middle housing in key markets. So not just Alberta, but also Ontario. These Alberta and Ontario is where our competitive advantages are. Like we have our teams and networks and relationships built, but these are things that we could rebuild from the ground up for any province. But I think between these two provinces, we know that there is enough opportunity. um, Canada is going through Canada's economy is transforming as we speak, right? So we do recognize that there's going to be some infrastructure project that will benefit Western Canada, right? And so we are more like economists, right? We keep on sharing articles with each other. Be like, hey, look at where the jobs are going. Look at where the GDP is going. Look at where the demographics are going. Look at where affordability is driving people. So these are all these factors that dictate where we will do, what we will do. But it's safe to say that we're developing new housing, we're leveraging government policies, we're leveraging CMHC financing. And when it comes to the model we have with our partners, that's been the same from day one. It's all the relationships. We have, people coming together, not just bringing capital, but also different skill sets, right? We have boots on the ground on every project, right? Like
Oh, it's a
Faizan and I,
must.
we
Yeah.
need peace of mind, right? I have young kids and I don't want to lose more hair, right? So it's like I want to buy back my time. So it's about having the right team, the right people in place. So right now we've got Ontario and Alberta to be the focus for land development and real estate. And then, coupled with the multifamily initiative, we have our active business, right, which is
Yes,
the
we should touch on
construction
that.
management.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where, we also see a huge opportunity for us to grow because just like you said, Tom, the ADUs, the basement conversions, the modernizations, the life extension projects, like there are plenty of those in and around the GTA area, right? So our goal is to, grow into that space, scale into that space. Um, we feel that that's an opportunity with a huge upside where Faizan and I can bring our skill sets, processes, and knowledge and connections to help others, accomplish more efficient, more competitive renovations, right? We want to differentiate ourselves from other contractors by, being that value add partner. So our goal is to grow that construction business in tandem with the multifamily. And at some point, if we're doing business here in Toronto with new construction and having our own construction entity, that would be a point of conversions for us, right? So we're developing our capacity in both those areas.
Yeah, like we were saying earlier, you could vertically integrate, or we were talking off air at least. You work on your own project with your own company. That'd be sweet. But are you mostly focused on the investors, or maybe a little bit residential? Who will you be trying to help out and work with for this construction company?
I think it's a bit of both. We've seen clients on both sides. We obviously have a base as investors ourselves. Majority of the network we have it consists of investors. So obviously that's a good start. And then when a lot of people that we know kind of know that we come from this background of conversions ourselves, and we have somewhat of an expertise in that, and we've done it many, many times, it becomes an easy conversation to say, hey, I'm building my basement. I want to convert my garage. I want to do this or that. Can you help me out with that conversion or value add project in general? So I think that's what we see a lot of, and even with, for example, flips and all, where people come and ask us for advice or say, how would you take this project and turn it into a successful flip? And so those are all opportunities as well. But I think with homeowners as well, if you have a good experience with a conversion or this or that, we have seen some homeowners come to us and ask us to replicate the same thing upstairs.
Mm, yeah, repeat customers. And
Absolutely.
actually, speaking of grants and CMHC and government financing, for people that don't know, there's a government grant now for the ADU conversions. You can get, I think,
Yes.
what is it, $80,000 at a low interest rate to put towards this unit, and that's probably that can at least in certain areas, maybe in Windsor, it can cover half the cost. I don't know about Toronto, maybe it's a little bit more pricey, but it's a no brainer. Go with the government's giving your handouts. Um, maybe you can, not to get too much in the weeds, but maybe you can go high level. Maybe a couple thing benefits to having an ADU conversion or um, reasons maybe why people should consider putting an ADU in their property. Would you mind elaborating on that a little bit, or why clients should maybe come to you to make this happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that you mentioned, the subsidies that or the grants that the government's giving right now, it's different municipalities, right? And they're managing their own kind of rebates. So typically, what we've seen is up to $80,000 for a detached ADU and up to 40,000 for an attached one. So if you have a garage or something, it's typically on the lower side, up to $40,000. And I believe for most municipalities, it's just a grant. They're not asking for it back. I do think that that is the opportunity for most people going forward because to add density, let's say if you're taking land and building up a two-unit property or building up a standard house, to add density that way versus an existing structure and just adding a basement to it or converting the garage, it's a much, much cheaper process. And with these grants and what we've seen in the market at the moment is kind of a liquidity crunch, right? Liquidity is dropping or has been dropping the last few years, the amount of money in the economy. So that's also causing a lot of investors to recognize that maybe they can't get the same type of financing that they may have been able to get before to allow them to do larger projects. And so what's the easiest? Just put the money back into your own house, put the money back into your existing properties. Whether you're going to do a renovation or you're going to build an additional unit, it's the simplest and easiest way to grow your investment, grow your income, um, while keeping into account, the current conditions that exist in the marketplace.
I think though it goes back a little bit to what you guys were saying earlier about needing to stabilize the properties. Now is a good time to put the money back into your own existing places and not necessarily have to keep buying new. Um, I wonder too because you said it's a little tougher now for people to get financing, and because you're dealing with CMHC so much. Did you ever get crunched by CMHC because not too long ago they had changed up the rules on people, and you had, I think it was what 2 weeks before you, like you had a deadline of 2 weeks before you would have to do a whole different process for financing. Um, how'd you navigate that? Because I'm assuming you were doing some projects back then as well. Or do you see CMHC? This is maybe a second part two question. Do you see CMHC changing it up again in the future?
No, it's like the short answer is yes. In all our presentations on the opportunities, we have a slide section for risks.
Mm,
And in that, we actually list CMHC because just like you said, we don't control CMHC. It's a crown corporation. It can do whatever it does, and it can change without notice. So what we need to do is stay informed, right? We can't
right.
control the changes, but what we can do is stay informed. We were fortunate that we weren't affected because our application was not in flight at the time of the change of premium.
Good, good.
Um, and yes, it's a higher premium, but at the end of the day, it's a cost of doing business, right? You got to look at the grander scheme of thing. CMHC is, in my view, changing for the better to really make sure the qualification process is tighter, right? They don't want the policy or the program to be abused, and that happens through a process of iteration. They put out a policy, they see how it's performing, they get their feedback, they look at it retrospectively, and then they'll realize that okay, we need to make a tweak.
Mm,
And that's the case with any policy, right? So it's not to put CMHC on the spotlight. They are adapting, they are pivoting, and they're ensuring that the dollars are going in the right places. And so our job is to stay informed, be well educated, talk to the people that really are um, well, they have a lot of intelligence in that space, right? Because we need to become students and not just assume that we read a Facebook post and therefore we know everything, right? You really got to look at the housing report, right? It's a dense report. Guaranteed, no one's going to read it, but if you really want to see where CMHC is struggling and or where they want you to focus on, you will read those reports.
mm.
They have a podcast, right? You can
Oh,
follow
did they
their
really?
podcast.
Wow.
They have a YouTube channel, and they have amazing experts, like housing experts, Canadian housing experts that do research, that do analysis, and these are the people that come out and speak their mind. You should be tuning into those voices and making sure that you are now learning and adapting your underwriting towards those policies. And that's another important piece when it comes to underwriting is we no longer just layer financing and look at the exit. We pressure test it, and you have to run sensitivity analysis. You have to run rental decline year over year because who knows what 5 years looks like. You have to assume no rental appreciation sometimes. You may want to assume there's no passive appreciation, right? Look at the low scenario, look at the worst case scenario, the doom and gloom. And if the
Hmm.
deal checks out with all these premium changes and CMHC guidelines changes, then you have a deal, right? Because in reality, you have a lot of upside, right? When you put the actual rents, when you put the actual income and expenses, there's a lot of buffer, a lot of contingency built into it. So
Mm,
long-winded answer, but this is where investors get caught up. They are pigeonholed onto what works today, and they're not doing the sensitivity analysis like what happens if the bond rate changes, if rents go up or property taxes go up. Like, there are all these scenarios that we need to run in our underwriting.
mm. Especially, I'd say, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong on your new builds, because it's harder to force the appreciation. Once it's already brand new, there's not very many levers you can pull. Oh man.
Yeah, it's a completely different program, right? It's like a loan to cost program. So it's like adding up our cost and giving a percentage of that. And just with any construction loan, right? Before CMHC gives you a construction loan, they need to validate your exit, right? That means your exit needs to have a value high enough such that you can afford the construction loan, right? That's basically your DCR ratio. Your income needs to support the debt that you're about to take on. And if it's not there, if it's not supported, then guess what? You're not getting that loan amount. You're going to get a reduced loan amount. So this is another reason why we love development is that it's the runway to the exit is well defined, it's prescriptive, it's known from day one. There is no tada moment with an appraisal coming at the end saying, here's your new value. We know our value from day one,
Right.
right?
Because you know you're going to get X amount of rent, and you know exactly what goes into it. That's a good
Exactly.
point. It's sometimes maybe you found this on flips. You're going off comps, but it's never a guaranteed. You're like, what are we going to sell at here? So that must be a good feeling, especially for your investors, to know, hey, this is a guarantee. Well, close as you can get to at least a guaranteed return on investment, or as close as you can to a home run. So that's a great way of explaining it with the CMHC. More people should definitely look into that. Where would you recommend, I guess, uh, newer investors start in terms of wanting to get into land development? Uh, Maybe, like you said, start with YouTube. Would you suggest any other books or people to look into or to research?
It's all of the above, right? Like information is everywhere, right? It's no longer proprietary. So YouTube, podcasts like this, webinars, books, um, just CMHC, and then really talking to a lot of investors, right? Like learning through osmosis is one of the best ways because you really want to talk to somebody who is already doing what you're planning to do.
Hmm.
That is where you get a lot of value through just by asking quality questions. And how do you ask quality questions? By becoming knowledgeable. How do you become knowledgeable? By reading, listening, watching. So, that's kind of the journey just to get any skill set from 0 to 10. That's the journey you would go to. And, the information is out there, it's in abundance. It's hard for anybody to miss it.
Well, I appreciate you
I'd also
guys.
say
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, yeah, I was just gonna say you can also, one of the best ways to learn anything in real estate or anywhere, find someone else doing it that you know is doing it well, and find a way that you can add value to their project and
Mhm.
partner with them, right? It doesn't always have to be money, but you could be the boots on the ground, you could be this person, that person, but find a way to partner with someone already doing it, and that's the easiest internship or apprenticeship that you could get in this business.
Absolutely, that's a good thing. If a lot of times people who are newer have nothing but time on their hands, so I want to help some busy people like yourselves, and yeah, then you can learn, get in the trenches a little bit. Oh man, I always personally I thought I agree with you there. I always thought that it's a good thing to get your hands dirty, and then that way you learn the most because that's where you make some mistakes along the way, but you can learn from them and you can accelerate your growth. Because I'm sure, like with all these products, and the more you churn out in terms of products, the more you've learned, and the faster you get to that end goal versus someone who does only one or two projects over the same time span. You got to keep moving forwards. Would you have any other recommendations on how people should continue to scale their business, or what they should, yeah, what should people really do to try to scale their business? Because now that you guys you've had this kind of period, and then now you're climbing. What do you recommend?
You know, uh, from my perspective, scaling a business is has a lot to do with yourself, how you're developing yourself, your mindset, your skill set. Um, a lot of those, the personal development is foundational to any growth. Because the bigger the problems you solve, you have to have the capacity to tackle those problems. And you also have to have more sophisticated relationships. You have to have a very strong network, right? You have to have good credibility, good track record to chew on more,
Hmm.
right? So being able to invest in yourself is a continuous cycle. It never stops. And it's essential to fuel your business because uh, the visions, the strategies, and or maybe aspirations can only come to reality when you execute on them, right? When you act and take action, and you pressure test, you ask the questions. I like the phrase like fail early, fail fast. Like if there is something, let's find out what it is, right? Let's not assume that it's always there and we're wasting time working on it, thinking it's going to be there, right? Like it's like let's go um, and this is where a partnership could really help, right? Because um, you want to go fast, but you also want to calibrate, right? So this is where Faizan and I yin yang a little bit, right? And it's important to have both perspectives because that's what's needed when it comes to scaling your business, managing risk, and then constantly developing ourselves, right? Like we just came back from a conference. We not just networked, but we learned a lot. We learned from the best. We learned from the tax experts. We learned from the best lawyers, and so there was a lot of information that continues to just refine, right? It never stays stagnant, even though we have done several deals. Faizan, is there a perspective you want to share from your end?
Yeah, for sure. I think everything you mentioned is pretty key. I think one thing that I would say is, keep the end in mind always. And I think figure out what you want, whether it's, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, keep the end in mind and figure out the steps that you need to take to get there. I think as much as we can talk negatively about the economy, about this, about that, right now in my opinion it is one of the best opportunities to build your business because everything is slow. You can take everything slow and you know that the world's not going to crash around you. So there are people doing almost every strategy and doing it successfully. Whether, we want to say it's the economy for it or not, there are people that are successful in every strategy. So keep the end in mind, figure out the steps you need to take to get there, and start working on those steps.
That's good. Yeah, you got to keep that vision or have, again, cliche, but have your why and all that jazz, just so you can
Exactly.
know where you're headed. That's also a good thing to remember too, because otherwise you'll get off into the weeds trying every single strategy, but trying to bring it full circle here. You guys stayed in the lanes that you're best at, and it's definitely paid off over time. Seeing what you're doing in out west, out east, the construction company right in Ontario as well. Hats off to you guys. So I really appreciate your time and your insights this evening. Where can people find you and connect with you online? And I'll make sure I also add that then to the description as well for the episode.
Both of us are active on social media, so you could find me on Facebook and Instagram. So Facebook, it's Babar Mogul, REI. Instagram is B Mogul. And Faizan?
For me, it's Faizan Yusuf on Facebook and FaizanYusuf.rei on Instagram.
Beautiful. I'll make sure that's in the description, and I'll tell you guys in this episode when it goes up. And thanks so much again for taking the time of your evening to hop on here and impart your knowledge. And to those that listen to this in the future, I'm sure they'll appreciate it as well.
This was a lot of fun. Thanks again for the opportunity, and yeah, look forward to seeing it go live.
Sounds great. Guys, like, comment, subscribe on this, and rate this on 5 stars as well, because we are now on Spotify, everyone. And we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye for now.